Well, hello, friends and neighbors. It's another special Tuesday night for you. We have a guest with us all the way from Ontario. Welcome to our stage here. This is Chris from Durham Distillery, which we just talked about, which is part of Ajax in Ontario. That's right?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Part
awesome.
of the village of Pickering, which is next to the city of Pickering, but is in the town of Ajax.
That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
Chris, thank you for being willing to come on, and we're going to talk some of your whiskeys here. And ahead of time, thank you again. You have shared with me some samples of what you have produced and what you're currently engaged in. So welcome to the show, and thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. I love talking whiskey and what we're doing here at Durham Distillery.
And that's like when you talk about that, that's what I want to start with. I want to start with a little bit. Either we can go quickly into what excites you in whiskey, but for me, I like to hear a bit of your journey. So can you share a bit, like, how did you get into distilling?
Yeah.
And then ended up with your co-founder, I believe, of this distillery. So
Yeah.
like, how did you first get into whiskey and get into distilling? How'd you know that was your thing?
So I didn't really know it was my thing. What I knew is that I wanted to be an entrepreneur for my kids, to teach them that they can do anything and to show them that they can build something from nothing. And distilling is kind of what I just decided to be an entrepreneur in. As silly as this sounds, it really came from watching, a show called Moonshiners on the Discovery Channel and thinking, hey, that would be a lot of fun. So from there, I reached out to Mike Deegan, who is one of the other co-founders of the Durham Distillery. And I said, hey, do you want to make moonshine? He's like, yeah, absolutely. What do we need to do? So that's when we learned how hard it is to get a distiller's license in Canada, and not knowing what to do at all. Our wives, while being very supportive, also said, hey, maybe you should figure out if you can do this first. So we then went and met with Don at Last Straw Distillery. I saw you had a post a few weeks ago kind of about his whiskeys. And he was kind of on the same journey as someone who didn't have a background in this and just thought it'd be cool to make whiskey.
Yeah.
So I ended up spending the next 2 years there on the weekends. So 16 hours on Saturday, 16 hours on Sunday, learning from the grain up with Don how to make whiskey. My wife is one of our other co-founders because I was gone for 16 hours a day. Oh, Don's there. Excellent.
Yep. Hi, Don. Hi, Tyler.
My wife, I consider to be one of the co-founders because while I was gone for 16 hours on Saturday and Sunday, she was home with our kids who were 3 and a newborn. So I was working a corporate job, 80 hours a week downtown, commuting 3 hours a day to and from it, and then disappearing for 16 hours on the weekend to do this.
Wow. Well, I love that very early in your story, you're connected to Don, and welcome to the channel again, Don. And also that spirit of what I heard, entrepreneurship, like we can do this. And you, I heard a little bit want to inspire maybe your children and others that
Yeah.
This is follow your passion kind of thing, or?
Yeah, it was really to follow our passion. The desire came from when our son was born and looking at him in the birthing suite and knowing he would come to me at some point and say, Dad, what do you do and do you love it? And all I could tell him is what I did, and it paid me very well, but I didn't actually love it. And my wife and I have this philosophy for our children, which is healthy and happy is all we care about. So we decided that we needed to start demonstrating what healthy and happy looked like. And from there, I started down the path about what wasn't making me happy in my life, which was a corporate job. And so then I was like, okay, well, let's go be an entrepreneur. What does that mean? What does that look like? A lot of long discussions with my wife about, the impacts to our finances. There's a joke I often find funny. It's like, how do you become a millionaire at distilling? Start out as a billionaire, which I think might be somewhat accurate to a lot of hobbies people get into.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but just already, and it's interesting. Don said he remembers your young person, I think, sleeping on bags of flour. Is that what he's commenting on here?
Yeah. So with him, he was generous enough to let me rent out his distillery on Saturdays and Sundays, and I would just pay a flat fee for the entire day, no matter how long I was there. So I would tend to aim, or my goal would be to get there for like 4 a.m. and start working so I could do as much as I could. any of you have done distilling, part of this is literally just waiting for water to boil. So I would start the mash, get it going, and then be super tired. And the most comfortable place to sleep was on a bag of grain or on a skid of grain. So I just pulled my winter coat up over me and went back to sleep for a couple hours while I was waiting for the still to warm up.
Perfect. I love that. Like that you've got that connection. He remembers, you know what? We're just going to sleep here on the saxophone. I misread that for a second. I thought that was your newborn. And then he was talking about you going to sleep.
Yeah, no,
yeah. That's awesome. Well, I love that you're speaking into passion. You're saying, you know what brings us joy. And at that point, that corporate job wasn't. I don't want to put words, but I was kind of hearing that. And then I'm assuming then making whiskey has become that. Is this now a joy in your life?
Yeah, it's funny. Don's one of the people I phone when I'm having a bad day, and he often reminds me, you'd rather be doing this than working your corporate job. And I've often said to my wife that my best or my worst day here has always been far better than my best day in the corporate world. To take an idea of a grain, and start to turn it into something and make it into something and kind of put it all together. And that's kind of really where our Home for a Rest whiskey came, which was our first release. And that was a bunch of experiments with Don and I kind of arguing or discussing the value of pH levels. What does yeast do? So we were running a bunch of different grains at a bunch of different pH levels with a bunch of different yeast. And we ended up with all of these 5-gallon buckets just strewn around Last Straw Distillery. And then Don said, well, I'm just going to pour it all into a barrel and we'll figure out what to do with it. So we did that. And then he said, you got to come taste this. So we came and tasted it. And he said, I have this barrel. It's kind of my gift to you guys on your journey here. Let's barrel this up and see what it does. So we barreled it up and we left it for 44 months. And then we ended up giving it the name of Home for a Rest. All of our spirits from our kind of main line have a musical note to it, because when we thought about how do we enjoy alcohol or spirits or cocktails, it's usually with friends listening to music, be it on a deck, a dock, a patio, a backyard, a driveway, wherever you are. There's usually always music involved. And then Home for a Rest was just a very fitting name because we finished it here in Ajax after we moved out of Vaughan. So both the whiskey and I were home for a rest to finish off here.
Well, okay. So I held this up a few times. I think I read it right. This is the Home for a Rest sample right here.
Yeah.
And it does tell me 44 months, the proof. It's got 90.5. But do you mind sharing a little bit? Can we still buy this, by the way? Or is this?
No, you can't. This was also a one-off. Which is why we picked a very popular kind of one-hit wonder Canadian song that everybody loves.
Sure.
And one of the great things we found about using music is a lot of people will imprint their own memories onto the bottle. And who doesn't remember in their youth or even weddings recently, someone playing Home for a Rest and everybody getting on the dance floor and jumping up and down and singing. So it's great. And another great story with that is the band reached out to us, Spirit of the West, because they wanted a bottle to celebrate for Ronnie Mann's passing, their lead singer, because he died from early onset Alzheimer's. So we sent them a bottle free of charge. Yeah. And then the co-writer of the song reached out to us to thank us and sent us a video and invited my wife and I to join him in a concert because he was playing for the Irish Rovers now, which is the band like 70 years old. I think it's like their grandkids are now part of the band from the original members. Yeah. So they happen to be playing in North Bay, which is an area my wife is from. So we got to go up, drop the kids off with the grandparents, and then go have whiskey with them backstage and enjoy Home for a Rest with some of the members of Spirit of the West.
I can only imagine the connections there, the goodwill that was in the group. I mean, toasting the passing of someone, and I want to say, although like I have shared story not as meaningful as that. That's what a tale. Yeah. But we'll connect with that sometimes when we are together, whether it's reflective or celebratory, and often whiskey or good food or that shared experience can help us remember, help make it meaningful. And so that is awesome. You were able to do that. That's really
cool. It was really cool.
Yeah.
A full circle story. So, and part of the reason why it's not available is I believe in single cask release. I think we should only experience whiskey the way Mother Nature and Father Time intend us to do it. So with Home for Rest, we created it. We weren't 100% sure if we could reduplicate it since it was a bunch of experiments. Mm-hmm. Luckily, over the last couple of years, I've been able to piece together the recipe from notes Don and I had. And now we have 12 casks of it down and resting for 2027.
Okay, so it may come back, maybe, obviously not exactly, but in a way that you believe it reflects that character. Like you'll be able
to the white version of it. I still had some of that from the original creation, and I'd say we were pretty close to it. What'll be interesting is we're going to try different barrels with it. So, and that one was a recharred red wine barrel that we did it in. Oh yeah. Now we're doing them some in new char American oak 3s and 2s.
Yeah. Okay. And I personally, I like, is it like scrape, like STR, like scrape down and recharred cask?
Yeah.
Or what? Yeah. Yeah. I like a little bit of red wine finish, not overpowering red wine. It can take me down a path that I don't want to go, but a little bit of red wine influence is a home run for me, for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to open up something within the first few minutes. And so I'd like to open up maybe one of these two. We've got cask 1 and cask 2.
Yeah.
They're, I don't know. What do you want to guide me into? Which one do you think I should open, and let's talk about?
So they're very different, even though they were the exact same mash bill and they were put in very similar barrels.
Okay.
What had happened was cask 2 had a bung leak that we didn't find for the first 24 hours. So there's a lot more oxygen in it while it was aging. Okay. It was made in a bourbon style. So we use 60% corn, 20% 20% malted barley, and then 20% oat.
So wait, is that, sorry, I was, playing with the tech here. Is that cask 1? I heard 20% oat, and
cask 1 and cask 2 are the exact same.
Oh, the same mash. And when I say that, is it a mash bill? Like they're not blended after? You actually did a mash?
So we do all of our mashes with all the grains together.
Okay.
Again, using what Mother Nature and Father Time intended based on these recipes. So what's really interesting is because more oxygen got into cask 2, that it has a very different flavor, or very noticeably different flavor than cask 1.
And is that the core? You're still, like, I heard the bung leak or whatever. So cask 2 and cask, that's one of the core differences, because same mash bill.
Same mash bill.
And same cask type.
Yeah, same cask type. They were both recharred bourbons.
Bourbons, okay.
From the same distillery, recharred by the same cooperage. And all we had was a bung leak in one of them.
Wow.
For 24 hours. So we got less bottles.
37 months. Is that what's on here?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to open up cask 1.
For sure.
All right.
I'll pour some cask 1 here.
And I will also say
the bottle it came in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's good, because you know what? Hang on. I'll focus in on that, because that's what people should be looking for. I'm assuming, is that still available?
No. Again, we only do single cask release. And COVID, unfortunately, put us behind in our whiskey program. So we're now just catching up, which is where our distiller's experience comes from. To help people kind of go on the journey with us for our next whiskey release.
Okay, well, I don't want to talk too much about whiskey people can't have, but let's at least get into it. I also want to thank you, with these 4 samples, you actually sent some nice glassware. So thank you very much. Very kind of you.
Glad you enjoy them.
Well, I haven't used them yet. All right, this is their inaugural pour right here. I thought it only made sense that we would toast together in the glassware that you said with the whiskey that you built.
Perfect. Makes perfect sense.
So 37 months, a mash bill, mostly corn, but I thought I heard, was it 20% oats, or was that too much oats?
20% oats, 20% malted barley.
Okay. Oh, yeah, for me. Actually, like a roast malt note is right there, like whether that's malted oats or malted barley. For me, actually, I'm getting that. I didn't know how much the corn was going to speak, because sometimes corn for me is buttery and sweet and right up front. Yeah. And this is actually just like, I just poured it. This is super first thoughts. I'm sure I'm all wrong. And then you got to steer me back carefully. But that's what I'm getting right away, like a roasted malty notes all over it. Wow. What
Yeah,
are
it's
some?
really interesting. The oat and the malted barley really tone down the corn a lot. I find the corn smoothed it out overall, but you really get in cask one, the oat comes through really strong.
Maybe that's even already on the nose. So let's try a little sip together to your health. Cheers.
Cheers.
Mm. I've had a variety of different whiskeys with oat. It's not a common one. I've had I think Kilbeggan out of Ireland. I've had a Canadian that has some in it. What's that? Shoot, I can't place it right now. So that could be. It's still a little bit new to me, but it still is giving me that really a fullness. That's why I'm going with that roasted malt sugar and a body, a presence that's right away in the palate for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's very full body, which I enjoy with it. Like it's not weak on the palate, and it's got a long lasting flavor to it.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Don's out. I don't know if you got a little for him. I'm sure he'd like a little nip again.
He had many of it when it was just the white version as we were creating this.
Sure, of
And
course.
Don's a great example. Like I can't pay enough compliments to him. And if you haven't had his whiskeys, anybody who's listening, order them online, get them shipped to you. Don's the one person I say I trust to make whiskey better than I do, but he really helped me kind of hone in this recipe while we were distilling it and what proof it was coming off. And one of the things I love about distilling, especially the distillers in Ontario, and I imagine it's the same across the country, is the level of helpfulness that everybody has. If you have a problem, you can phone somebody up and they can kind of help you troubleshoot whatever that problem is. Don gets a few of those phone calls from me when like something's not right here. Let me walk you through my process and tell me where it's messed up. But I've done that with other distillers as well. So I think there's that great sense of community that we all kind of help each other to make sure we're putting out the best products and making sure people are enjoying great Canadian whiskeys and other spirits.
Well, I love hearing that, and I wish I was really a part of it, like making whiskey and out there and whatnot. But I've been fortunate enough to be invited in and alongside those that are doing the hard work like you. And I sense that camaraderie and that willingness to help each other. Really had that out in BC with their craft distilling network is tight.
Yeah.
Here in Alberta, like I've heard it from a few, but I'm not as much on the pulse, which is odd for me because I live here.
Yeah.
But I think Don was talking to that and you've just shared it here too. And I think we're stronger together. I know I say I'm just enjoying whiskey, but
Yeah.
I think people like yourself, I love to hear that you're helping each other out. Really, really good.
Yeah, no, it's great. Actually, I was talking to Don earlier this week when I was trying to figure out why my proofing numbers were off.
So, there is still, I didn't share this. There is some nice light fruit notes in here as well. But for my palate, first thoughts, it's leaning more into a nice full bodied, a little bit sweet grain forward note, but not in an underdeveloped grain. I don't mean that. I'm not saying that, but to me, that's where the note's a little bit savory, a little bit, I feel like I'm getting to know the character of the mash you put together. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, very cool. In fact, now maybe we need to pour a little more whiskey than I anticipated. So now I'm very curious about this one, which is cask 2.
Yeah. So I said cask 2 had the bung leak, so it had more oxygen in it while it was aging. So it really mellowed down the notes of the oat, I find. It's still a very delicious whiskey, but it's also subtly and noticeably different, if that's possible. Words usually don't go together.
Yeah. Now, you've said Mother Nature and Father Time, but these proof numbers, like this is 45%.
Yeah.
So this isn't coming out of the cask at 45%.
No, these ones came out of the cask around 63%. Same with Home for a Rest. Home for a Rest, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but is 905 proof, which pays homage to the area code of Durham region, which is where we're located. So we worked really hard to make the alcohol 45.25%, so we can say that's 905 proof. One of the little details for our Durham region friends.
Nice. I like details. And sorry, yes, we can come back and open Home for Rest. The reason why I moved on is I mistakenly thought perhaps these casks were available for sale. So I actually tried to get into a whiskey that I thought
I
someone could
appreciate
tune
that.
in and order from you directly. So I'm happy to pour the Home for Rest as well, and should have chronologically, as you mentioned, it's your first release. But I made the mistake, and we didn't talk ahead of time, and I apologize for that.
No. Hey, anyway, people always ask me, what's your favorite way to enjoy whiskey? And I say in a glass.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter which order we do it in.
Yeah. What's your favorite whiskey? The one in front of me. All those
Exactly.
good things.
I used to joke when I was younger, like, what's your favorite beer? I'm like, a cold one and a wet one. And if you get stuck, you can skip on cold.
I should take more time between them, but this on the nose, I do need to spend more time with it. But on the nose, I'm going to say again, like just say, John, you're wrong if I'm wrong. But for me, it's a little sweeter on the nose. I would say.
Yeah. So I'll never correct anybody on what they're smelling or what they're tasting, because everybody's palate is different. It's like I don't give tasting notes on whiskey because my palate's very different than your palate.
Absolutely. And as someone who just really enjoys the craft that you're putting out, I try to say that. I say, like, really, I'm going to share what I'm getting. But just as good food, I enjoy some good foods that my wife, frankly, really doesn't like. And we're in the same house all the time. So, yeah.
It's funny. So when I first sip a whiskey, I don't look at flavor until my second or third sip. What I look at is what I call production value of the whiskey. So when I drink it, am I getting a strong flavor? Whatever those flavors are, is it strong and does it have kind of a full mouth feel to it?
Yeah.
And then as I'm swallowing it, do I need to breathe out because of the ethanol in it, or is it smooth enough that I can just drink it? And then as it goes down and I start to get the hug, does the hug come on early or late? And does it stay long or is it shallow? And from there, I can kind of feel like I get an idea of how well the whiskey was produced. And on the ones where it's kind of ticking all the boxes for me, then I kind of really go in and start trying to figure out the flavors and everything.
That's an excellent approach. I really appreciate that. When I'm trying to get at, like, depending on if I'm doing a review versus a tasting, I'm just giving thoughts and that's where it goes. But review, I try to do a similar thing, and I try to hone in on, like, I hear maybe the craft or the quality or, how it's put together. Even if I find in the end, all these flavors aren't what I'm really liking, the experience was excellent. Right from nose through the palate, it didn't run into something bitter. Nothing like was such a contrast that I was shaken out of my experience. Those kinds of things, I can resonate with that for sure.
And I'll say to people, there's a whiskey I tried that I think has been produced really well, but I don't like the flavor. I tell people, like, it wasn't a flavor profile for me, but I think the distillery nailed it when they produced it. Like, it's produced really, really well, and you should try it and see if you like it.
So just before I sip this, I can see in your background, because we've talked about that you mash, and this is the same mash, and this was in an ex-bourbon cask, same cask. This one had the more air, so you probably lost a little bit more to the Angels as well, I imagine. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I think I'm just looking at the numbers here. It was 180 bottle difference.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That would have hurt in terms of production and keeping the lights on. But where I'm going for is right over your shoulder. I can see a bit of your still. What kind of still are you using to create this?
So this one, again, was produced at Last Straw. So we were using a column still like the one behind me here, much larger. Sorry, I'm not very good at where my body's at with the still. So this is our old one. This is our 200-liter one that we used to have at Last Straw Distillery while we were apprenticing there and getting our license. And now we use Genio stills downstairs, just so we can take advantage of the computer technology and making sure everything's being monitored and produced properly. But this was very much done through a traditional column still. We ran it up to 86% alcohol by volume at the height of the hearts. And then like everything, we cut it off early. And then we put the tails and the heads through the 50-liter Genio that Don had at the time to kind of clean it up a little bit, and then batch it all together and divide it between the two barrels, and then add reverse osmosis water to it while it aged.
Awesome. That's awesome. Just to share a bit of that process. And and all again, Don featured in that story. So that
Yeah,
he's definitely a big part of this journey. So I want to taste this a little bit, if that's all right.
for sure. Go ahead.
Cheers to your health.
Cheers.
First thoughts. It is actually a little oakier for me in structure, a little less mellow, not mellow, but like malt grain. Something else that I was getting more in the oat one. I mean, I know they both have oats, but for me, this one, not sharp, but has a little more oak tannin, a little more oak structure, pretty quick on it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I noticed how they're very like structurally different in them. Like there's a fuller mouthfeel with cask 1 than with cask 2, but they were proof the same. And the flavor to me is like, to your point, kind of the malted comes out really more in cask 1 than it does in cask 2.
You know, I can just want to resonate with yourself in the sense that they are different.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say I'm enjoying one more than the other, but I will say I almost feel the difference as much as taste it. Like I that's my impression right now. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
And that's the stuff that I love about single barrel releases, is that those slight little variations turn into kind of big things 3 years down the road. So it's kind of that idea of like if you're driving a big cargo vessel and you keep changing your distance by 1 foot over the 3 years, you're completely at a different location. It's kind of the same idea. And that's, I think, the fun part of single.
I appreciate that you're embracing the concept of cask release versus, especially as a smaller, I think it's difficult to take only a few amount of barrels. I know you did a blend here, but and try to blend a consistent release.
Yeah.
With this kind of thing, I think embrace it, celebrate it, share it. Like, yeah, this is how it is. What do you think? What do you like? What's different? I think that's really awesome. Yeah, really cool. Now, having said that, you have said this was, let's put some barrels together. Let's get this going. And you even laid up, what I think I heard is you've laid up like not a re-release. I don't know, how do you call this? The coming back of this?
Yeah, we'll call it Home for Arrest 2.0.
Yeah, sure.
When we knew what we were doing, and then we made the next version.
Okay, so then I will, if you're okay, I will open this
absolutely.
up as well. I don't.
Whiskey's made to be drinking.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going back now to your first release, right?
Yeah.
And this is 90.5, so 46.
45.25.
45.25. I should be able to do that kind of math. And this has 44 months on it. Don't say that I'm a teacher. I am. So I don't know what that says for our kids.
And again, the 905 pays homage to the area code for Durham region.
Yeah, right.
We very much wanted to pay homage to where we grew up and where this was finished. And, you know, Don's Distillery in Vaughan is also in the 905. So kind of stay true its whole aging life.
Nice. Now, while I'm nosing this a little bit, I was asked here, is there a tasting area? Do you have a storefront? Like, talk a little bit about your distillery if someone wants to come visit you.
Yeah, for sure. So we're located at 25 Mill Street in the village of Pickering, which is part of Ajax. I believe we're the only distillery in Canada that's located inside a neighborhood. We're in the original fire hall for the village of Pickering, which is 800 meters from my front door. So I have a nice little commute in the morning and a bit longer of a stumble home at night. But yeah, right now I'm sitting actually inside our retail shop where we have a tasting area where you can come in and sample many of our different vodkas and gins and rums. And then our plan is to next year open a patio here so that some of the cocktails we create for our cocktail classes. So anybody who's close by, we do offer cocktail classes almost weekly here where you can come in and make 3 masterfully crafted spirits or cocktails with us in the evening. So we really kind of want to enjoy that experience. Have people come in and experience it in a very kind of different way. All of our retail team is trained to work with you and kind of figure out which vodka is right for you based on kind of which cocktails you're making or how you enjoy. And same with our gins and our other spirit lines. So if you're in the GTA or you're going to be in the GTA, please make the trek out to Ajax, and that's 25 Mill Street again in Ajax.
I have yet to drop in, obviously, to yourself. We shared that very brief as you came on. I actually have a relative very close to you, like in Pickering, and I next time I will commit to driving a little further down the road because we're coming up from Hamilton area, and dropping in. I like that idea of learning more of the cocktail, but they're not making like gin or anything. They have spirit, and you're helping them and making a cocktail.
Yeah, so Alexandra, who runs our events and our cocktail classes, and is kind of our chief mixologist, she comes up with 3 new cocktail recipes or 3 variation on cocktail recipes every 3 months. We kind of tie them to the season. So, for example, during Christmas, we did an espresso martini using our Wheat Kings vodka. Our Wheat Kings vodka is made from a malted winter wheat, which gives it a really unique vanilla caramel finish to it. That's all natural from the grain. But when you put it inside an espresso martini where you want that vanilla caramel finish flavor to it, it really stands out and really kind of help elevate that martini.
I wish I was closer. That'd be a lot of fun. So
we do ship across Canada.
No, I just meant to come out and be part of an evening like that. That would be great. So this one here, a nod with the proof. We heard the moving story as well with the connection to the group and the song and that way. But tell me again, I'm sorry, what a bit in this blend. Like, can you talk a bit about the grains in here and how we got it together? Sorry.
Yeah, so I don't know the exact percentages off the top of my head, but it's a rye, corn, wheat mix in the kind of that order. Rye being the predominant grain. I think it's at 57%. And then corn and wheat. And wheat's one of my favorite grains to work with because I find it just takes flavor so well. So anytime you put wheat in anything, I find it just kind of highlights the flavors or takes on the characteristics of the other flavor and really kind of pulls them forward. So all 3 are very different whiskeys, and 1 because of the mash bill and then 2 because of the barrel aging.
Yeah, this is it is interesting that you're highlighting the wheat in conversation here because I'm not. Wheat has certain things in my mind as well, but right now for me, I'm getting a lot more, perhaps rye and corn. It's a little closer to like the other ones. Just my thoughts here today is a little more malted. It's almost like it's not a single malt, 60% corn, but both of them, I've been nosing back to them. I'm even getting some chocolates out of the number 2, the one that was aerated.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, these are more characteristic of a malted barley, single malt, like those notes. Whereas this is closer to a blended Canadian whiskey on the nose for me. It's got some nice sweetness. It's got a little bit of spice in the nose. It's coming that way in a pleasant way. But I'm just saying that to me, I would hope in a blind, I would think that.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, I got to try this too. Cheers. Really nice twist right there because at first, I go through a millisecond or whatever. At first, the whole thing is a first. I should be sipping it multiple times across multiple days before I say anything about the flavor. But what I was going to say is it was sweet and light. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then it had a really nice spice kick, but not in a cough like spice kick. It was just a little bit of peppering and light cinnamon and just a nice, I don't know, it came together. Like it like tasty.
Yeah.
You know, when spices and grains and it's tasty. I don't know how to say that. Like it's just like, oh, this is the kind of thing I'd probably have more of.
Yeah, it also set the bar high for us because we won a gold medal for it at the Artisan Canadian Distillers, and then bronze medal at the Canadian Whisky Awards, and Harvest Moon won bronze in both competitions. So, kind of it's great to have our first 2 whiskeys kind of take home those medals.
Yeah. Well, this is a tasty whiskey as well. And as you described, all 3 that I've been trying here, the cask 1, and then the cask 2 with more aeration, I might say, and then the Harvest Moon, which should have been not Harvest Moon. Sorry. the home for a rest. Why did I say Harvest Moon? Oh, that's because the other ones are. That's what's in my head. I'm sorry. Long day, end of the day for me here, and I apologize. Anyways, all I was describing here for anyone tuning in at this point is as each of these is unique and well put together. And as you described, this first one, Home for a Rest, came in well for you. Like it was respected by peers and did well and that. So, one thing I do want to talk about, though, is something that I have never seen in the way that you're putting it forward. Durham Distillery and yourself, Chris, are looking at creating a distiller's experience. That's what I have here in this bottle. You probably have other examples.
Yeah,
but I am very interested.
Bottle.
Yeah, that's a better picture.
So our distiller's experience was kind of born out of one of my big things is community, and how do we bring community in on the journey with us? One of my favorite things to do is when we do barrel pulls and kind of see how a whiskey is aging. So the distiller's experience was born out of that idea is how do we bring people on the tasting journey with us to see that evolution of our next whiskey as it ages. So what the distiller's experience is, it's a 2-year journey with us where when you purchase it today, you get bottle 1 or release 1, which is nicknamed Daybreak. And this is what will be the final whiskey in 2 years, but it's only aged 1 year in the barrel. So we have 3 barrels that from our cooperage came off the line 1, 2, 3, and they were charred the same, made the same. Like I said, they came off 1, 2, 3. I batch made all of the grain together, which is 80% rye and 80% malted winter wheat. And then we put the 3 barrels together and had them rest for a year. And when we pulled it at the 1 year mark, I said, I think other people need to try this, and they need to kind of see how cool it's going to evolve over time as wood and water have time to meld together with the spirit and see how it evolves. So when you purchase it, you also get these 2 redemption certificates. So like Willy Wonka or Charlie going to the chocolate factory, you come back to us in a year and in 2 years, and you get your second and third bottle. The second bottle is aged 2 years, and the third bottle is the fully macerated Canadian whiskey. Included in your box is also the Distiller's Experience Distilling and Tasting Workbook. It'll tell you, or it'll take you through kind of the little bit more history of the distillery, a write-up from my childhood best friend who I've been friends with for 30 plus years about who I am and why this kind of makes sense that I would build this, why we picked the cooperage we pick, why we use the mill we use, which is K2 mill. And then kind of how do I experience whiskey, and then plenty of rooms for you to do your own tasting notes over the coming years. And with every box comes 2 glasses because whiskey is meant to be shared. So as you're experiencing this with other people over the next couple of years, you can make notes and share it with them. And then throughout the next 2 years, we have a few kind of surprises being planned for people who purchase the experience.
What a orchestrated, thought through, full experience from story, notebook, glasses to share because whiskey should be, and to bring people along on the journey of how this will evolve. So this is Daybreak that I have here. That's what's just come out now in February, right? No, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
We took advantage of the leap day and dumped it on the leap day, February 29th. And then, it's very kind of you to say the forward thinking. We usually don't pick the whiskey name or the product name until I absolutely have to. But with this one, we picked the name 2 years in advance. And throughout the next couple of years, for those who participate, we're going to drop hints on what the actual song title is that we're using for this.
Interesting. That is really cool. And you mentioned, for anyone who's tuning in and is now, I hope everyone is intrigued, but thinking about how they could order and be part of this, distiller's experience, you are able to ship across, because I've got, whiskey on the West Coast. Yeah. Matt here is all the way out in Vancouver. So
yeah, we've shipped it so far to Alberta, and we've shipped some out east. So it is available. There's only 300 available, and I think we're down to around 200 now. I haven't checked the website lately, but yeah, you can purchase it. It's a one-time purchase, and then that includes your next 2 bottles. So you can order it off our website, durhamdistillery.ca, or if you're in the Ajax, GTA, Durham region area, stop on by and you can pick one up as well. Father's Day is coming up. It's a great Father's Day gift.
Yeah, it absolutely. And to be clear, they're ordering and you get bottles, not like this.
Correct. You get the full 750 ml bottle all 3 years.
Exactly. Just want to be clear to the group. They're not. Yeah. Okay. Well, like, I don't know. Is this something that I should open?
Absolutely. Whiskey is meant to be drinking. It's funny. So I found there was this period of time where I wasn't finishing bottles of whiskey. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get that bottle again, so I don't want to finish it. And then I realized that, whether I finish it now or I finish it later, if I don't finish it now and something happens to me, I don't get the joy of drinking it. And my wife's next husband gets to finish off my bottles. So my decision became that I was going to drink it. And so now my friends and I joke that when we finish a bottle, it's like, well, screw the next guy. He doesn't get it.
Awesome. Love the approach on that. I might even.
So you won't find any mostly drinking bottles in our household because it should be enjoyed with friends and shared. And so again, this is only 1 year old. It's only spent one time in New American Oak Char 3.
Yep.
Like I said, it's 80% rye, 20% malted winter wheat.
When I was hearing the whole story, I thought you had said 80% rye and 80% winter wheat. I'm like, I can do math. That doesn't work.
No. 80 and 20. I might have misspoken, said 80 and 80, but it's 80 and 20.
Wild. I've had the good fortune of learning a little bit about heads and hearts and tails, and then a little bit of new make and a bit about what is it like after a month or a couple of months. And this is very sweet and floral right now for me on the nose, like really expressive. Wow. But as expected in a year, I mean, I don't want to critique this. I don't even know if I should talk about, because this is something I think people need to get into and to almost like live and, talk with their friends about, but not hear someone like me go on and then expect to get that. Like, this is an experience.
Yeah. This is the stuff I find really cool is like, if you look at the color of it and then, let's hold up Home for a Rest here, which was 44 months versus 12, like the color is pretty similar. So what we learned from that is that whiskey derives most of its color in the first year. And over the next 2 years, it's going to get slightly darker, but not a ton darker. But the flavor and the complexity of that flavor is going to change more. And that's what you're going to experience over the next 2 years with this experience.
And that, when you mentioned about complexity of flavor, I would say even though the nose is floral and expressive and sweet, it seems lighter and as you describe, like less layered. It's interesting. You're in good company sharing that right there. Dr. Don Livermore, who did his PhD on effects of wood, discovered that too. You get most of that coloring within the first 200 days if you're doing new oak char.
Yeah.
Like it's outstanding. Well, I'm going to try it too, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
It is still tasty. Like, it's not whiskey. It's early. Yeah. It's certainly when we talk the structure that I was getting off the cask too, like I was really getting some oak tannins. I'm not getting that here, but it's still light on the tongue. It's nice in the palate. To me, it's still moving sweet. Sweet light.
That's from the malted winter wheat. So like when malted winter wheat comes off the still by itself, it's almost like sucking on a caramel, I find. So what I find this does for my palate is you get kind of that spicy note that you would expect to find in a rye, and then it mellows out and that vanilla caramel finish kind of comes through a little bit at the end. I'm hoping it's going to get more pronounced as the flavors meld together more over the next 2 years.
For an 80% rye, you described spicy, but I was expecting a little more right there heat. It's
Yeah.
there, but I'm getting, and I always think of wheat, and it must be wrong in this case, of a bit of an accessory grain. In this case, I'm getting that sweetness, that light caramel, that I'm getting that quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love like our Patio Lanterns vodka is made from a winter wheat as well. And I find like winter wheat is just a soft, delicious flavor. As I mentioned earlier, it takes other flavors really well. So one of the biggest compliments I find we get in our cocktail classes when we do martinis on the rotation, someone will say to me, and it happens almost every class, like I traditionally don't like vodka martinis because of the harshness of the ethanol or the alcohol. But on yours, I don't get that at all. And I'm like, yeah, winter wheat is just such a great grain that just kind of hides in the background and pushes everything forward. And when you malt it and you get that vanilla caramel, it kind of does the same thing, but also says like, look, I've got something to add to the party as well.
Yeah, this is sweet like dessert. That, to me, that's how I would say it. It's really nice that way. Wow.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see how this is going to be in a year and in 2 years.
Yeah, we really awesome to get in on that, and really, when you have a whole bottle, you can go back and have us like, okay, now I can sip it a year. It's a year apart, but I can be in the same space and taste that difference. Yeah, that would be really awesome. So we've talked your entrance, cask 1 and 2, and now the distiller's experience. Are you, and you did say you're laying up some, are you also releasing other whiskeys? Most of the people that'll watch this, certainly on replay, are chasing whiskey. Sure, we like gin and we are interested in cocktails, but whiskey's our core.
Yeah, so the mash bill that we did for the distiller's experience is going to become one of our core mash bills. The home for us, as I mentioned, we have 12 more barrels of it aging. We're going to do some 100% rye variations as well. And then I think over the next kind of couple of years, we're going to play around a bit more with different mash bills. Again, I like to batch make an entire 2 or 3 barrels at a time. And then we kind of play around with the barrels, and we'll play around with barrel finishes and things like that. We have our first rum coming out in July. So we're going to save those barrels and then kind of do some finishing with that as well for some future whiskeys. I think that's the fun part about doing single cask releases, is that what I want to focus on is consistency of experience and production, not so much consistency of flavor. I think there's a lot of brands that do that consistency really well. Bottle 1 tastes the exact same as bottle 1,000, 10,000, 1 million. And that's really what they're great at. I want to be great at just making delicious whiskeys. And each one's kind of a new adventure for you. So, we had many people who came in and bought cask 1 and then bought cask 2 expecting something similar. And they were all just super surprised and pleasantly surprised to find a lot of similarities between them, but also a lot of differences that gave them a whole new tasting experience.
Well, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't on a journey of discovery with flavor and wanting to try different things. And now that we've met Chris, and now I know about Durham Distillery, I will be attuned to some of your releases as well, and looking forward to catching them on the way out. The people that have joined us and stayed with us throughout, is there any questions you guys have of Chris or what might be coming of Durham? I don't always hit the right questions, so you guys got to get them in because we're getting close to wrap it up. But what a nice lineup that you've supplied, and I will absolutely say each one is unique. Like without a doubt, they taste an experience. To me, tonight is a little bit almost more about the palate. They all have unique taste and flavors. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying I'm really noticing how it's playing around and how my mouth is kind of going, oh, this is chewy. Oh, well, this is a little bit, sweet over here, and that kind of thing. Really interesting. Yeah.
I'm glad you're enjoying them. That's the important part, is that you enjoy them.
Absolutely. Well, with that, and with a little bit of a nod, I think you've been able to share about people can drop in and join. We heard about the cocktail making and whatnot, so I hope people can drop in or hit your website and order from there. I hear you ship across the country, and I really, any whiskey geek, as you said, Father's Day, this distiller's experience would be a wonderful idea, because it helps us all understand the evolution of this whiskey as it interacts with wood and what you're getting up front, and then how it would be 2 and then 3 years and whatnot. So I appreciate you putting that together.
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned, anybody wants to order, you can order from durhamdistillery.ca, and we do ship across Canada.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for everyone who stayed with us. Don, One Woman Seaway, and Matt out west. You guys were great. Have a great night, you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Talk to you soon.